Hero time starts now.
Hi everybody, this is Laura Summer, love that Laura, and I played Patamon in the original Digimon Adventure Series, 6 Tri-Movies, and Last Evolution Kazuna. And you're listening to the Anime Mavericks. So, come on everybody, Digivolve with me, Patamon. Oh yeah.
From the land of crazy hairstyles and overly ridiculous weapons, it's time for the Anime Mavericks podcast. And now, here they are, your Anime Mavericks.
Hello everyone and welcome to the Anime Mavericks podcast, the official anime podcast of RVT. We want to thank you guys once again for joining us here this week on The Shades.
I'm Angie.
And I'm Mike Shell.
But ladies and gentlemen, we are not alone tonight. We have a very special edition of the Anime Mavericks podcast here tonight because we have a very special guest for the first time. You know, we are the Anime Mavericks and we're here to bring you all the anime news, reviews, and interviews that you crave. But we've never really honored that interviews part for the longest time. Only in our very first episode did we ever actually have an interview on this show. But that, my friends, ends tonight because, ladies and gentlemen, I'd like to introduce to you our very special guest, Doug Stone. Doug, how are we doing tonight?
What? Am I on the air? Where am I? Who are you people? What's going on here? What? I'm fine, thank you. Yourselves?
Doing fantastic. Oh man, it is.
I didn't want to just. Hello would have been too boring. You know.
You know, we don't like boring around here. We want to be fun.
Exactly.
Doug Stone, I thought we were doing Dr. Stone.
Oh, God damn it! Mike, I swear to God.
Well, I was Dr. Light, but not Dr. Stone yet.
Oh, jeez. So you can already see what kind of interview we're going to be having tonight, ladies and gentlemen.
We probably never should have. We never should have shared that bottle of scotch before you went on the air. It was probably.
Oh, come on! It was delicious, and you know it.
Yeah. In retrospect, I don't know. Too late now. None of us have pants on, and we're talking. So let's just do it.
Indeed. And ladies and gentlemen, and folks at home, if you do have questions for Doug in his career, please feel free to post them in the chat. ! RVT Entertainment, or not exclamation point, at RVT Entertainment, and I will be sure to check that. Oh, wait a minute. Hold on. I actually have to hit a button here because we got a birthday boy in our chat. We have a bit of a tradition we do around here. Now, you're probably not going to get this, Doug, but this is something we do whenever one of our fans has a birthday today. So, Mario 1-Up, I see what you say there, and this one's for you.
Happy birthday to you. Happy birthday to you. Happy birthday. Happy birthday. Happy birthday to you. Omedetou! Subarashi!
For context,
somebody
Doug,
who sings as badly as me. That's
well, no, for context, that's actually from a Japanese superhero show. You know, we were talking before the show about how you did stuff for Power Rangers and Beetleborgs. That's actually from a show that was basically one of the inspirations. That's from a series called Kamen Rider O's. And, yeah, it's a Japanese guy singing in English, so you can imagine how that usually goes.
Yeah, I'm sure. Arigatou gozaimasu. I'm sure my Japanese would make all the Japanese giggle. So yeah.
Hey, none of us are perfect here. I'm not the best at it either. Anyway, let's get to talking about you. That's the reason. That's the reason why we're here tonight. So I guess the obvious first question is how did you exactly get started getting involved in voice acting and the dubbing industry?
Well, I had gone full time I'm from Canada originally, and I was doing stage work at night, just as an amateur. There was no way to make a living in the industry in Canada in the 1980s. You could just eke out a living as a stage actor, perhaps. But the day job I had required somebody to do some voice work. They needed somebody to do scratch tracks for Jell-O commercials. And I auditioned along with several different employees, got the gig, started to do that. And after a while, they said, hey, you're pretty good. We like what you're doing. We're going to start paying you to do some other work for us. And I went, paying me? They're paying me to do voice work. Wait a minute. Maybe I could actually make money doing voice work and augment my stage career and my hopeful on-camera career by doing a little voiceover on the side. So eventually I quit the day gig, created my own voiceover tape. It was a horrible demo, and started marketing myself in the Toronto area, and actually started to get some gigs doing commercials, primarily doing characters like Santa Claus and vampires at Halloween and whatever. But I was picking up enough money between that and my stage work and on-camera work where I was actually making a living as an actor, which is the dream come true. I did not expect voiceover to become the primary thing I did. But I had done an on-camera gig, and the cinematographer recommended me to one of the top agents in Toronto very kindly. They signed me, and within about 8 months, they happened to get one of the few agents in Canada that got the auditions for a series called Mask, Mobile Armored Strike Command, that was going to be recording in Los Angeles. I got to audition for it, got the lead role and 2 other roles. It turned into 8 roles eventually. Came to LA, did the series, was encouraged by the producers and directors and studio owners that I was good enough to work in LA, which I had never dreamt of or imagined was possible. So I ended up staying in LA, and my career, eventually I got less and less stage work, or less concerned with stage work and less concerned with on-camera work, because the doors were opening in the voiceover side. So by the late 80s, I came in 1985, 86 to do that series. By the late 80s, it was almost primarily all voice work, including directing and casting, et cetera, et cetera. So the doors just kind of opened for me in a direction that I wasn't totally expecting.
Yeah, I mean, it was a very blossoming industry at the time. Like in the late 80s, early 90s, voiceover, especially for like what we talk about here, anime, was just starting to become a thing. And now here we are, 2020, and now it's like that's like a big time thing, and you were there on the ground floor, and still doing work to this day.
It was pretty. I was in there pretty early, and it had only been really blossoming in LA for about a year before I got my foot in the door. And Robotech, I can't remember what the early shows were, but yeah, I was fortunate enough that I had some aptitude for dubbing as well as for voiceover, and kind of took to it immediately. I could see the lip sync and hit the lip sync and whatever, so I became an actor commodity, and then that moved into doing script adaptations and directing. So, yeah, pretty early in on the anime floor.
Yeah,
just to bring up here, since I'm actually a child of the 80s, so I actually watched Mask as it was actually originally on the air.
Ah, cool.
So what was it like? So as you said, you had 8 roles. What was it like when you had to talk when it was only your characters in the scene?
I loved it. That was my favorite, is when I maybe had 3 or 4 characters who got into a dialogue with each other. You change, I like to at least change body stance character to character to help enhance the voice work, and how it changes your chest, it changes how the air passes through, and talking to myself may sound neurotic. I mean, here I do it here at home, of course, all the time, but I don't get paid for it. But to be standing in the studio and go from Bruce Sato, who I would do more bent over and very humble, wait, suddenly be doing Dusty Hayes. Well, I'm punching the air, and he's all energetic, and I'd be moving around. So it was. I loved it. It's my favorite thing is to do scenes where I jump from character to character.
Any particular character that stands out as far as favorite to work with? Was it more of the hero side, or more with working with Max Mayhem?
Well, Max did. I wasn't Max. I was Max. You're right. The brother, and as opposed to Miles. Max was a throat terror. I don't know how poor Brendan did Miles all the time, because boy, that voice is a throat killer. So he was not my favorite. But I really liked Bruce a lot. I liked the heroes, but I liked Nash, Gory, and some of the bad guys as well. The Russian guy, I don't remember his name, a Russian character, but I like it's always fun to be bad guys as well.
I actually just,
But it was,
just not to interrupt, but I was just pulling up the thing on Wikipedia. The character was Boris Bushkin, I believe.
that was it, Boris, yes. Yeah. It's hard to remember all the names after all the years, but
Well,
yeah.
how many characters you've done all this time? Yeah, I'd be shocked if you remembered every single one of them.
Yeah, God. No, not a chance. But the mask ones, because they get, certain things become iconic. You never know why you're doing them, that they're going to be, of course, it's just a gig. I had no idea that Mask would still have fan clubs in 2020, which it does around the world. And I get, people writing me asking for autographs and whatnot for a cartoon that I did 35 years ago. It's amazing. But you never know. But I had to educate myself and re-educate myself because there is a fan base and they are still very interested in that show.
Yeah, we were actually talking about this right before the show. How like when it came to certain memorable characters you've done, that you had to go back and relearn them because of that. Because probably one of the most memorable characters you've done in more recent times was, of course, Psycho Mantis in the Metal Gear Solid games.
Yes, and I, it was just a gig. I enjoyed it and everything, but it was just a gig, and I had no idea because I don't do a lot of conventions and whatnot. It's just not my style. I didn't realize, and I don't often go on Google and look and see, am I getting hits? Are people talking about the characters I did? So I was surprised when I was at a mask convention. It was actually a convention in Philadelphia. I forget what it was called, but it was like a nostalgia convention about old shows. And about every 10th or 20th person didn't want to talk about Mask, which is what I was there for. They wanted to talk about Psycho Mantis. And I went, oh, Psycho Mantis, I kind of remember. And that's when I got educated and found out that he's on a lot of top 10 lists for villains still. So, yeah, I went back and watched some of the footage. And I actually did some commercials as Psycho Mantis selling cars a couple of years ago, believe it or not.
We have to find these now.
You can find them online. You can find it on YouTube. If you look up Psycho Mantis in car commercials. I thought it was a joke. Somebody contacted me from Florida from a talent agency, and I said, look, you have to get the rights to use that footage. Are you aware of that? I thought, this is some, silly person. They went, we've actually already done it for 4 cartoons, and they were all like Digimon and big cartoons. They said, yeah, we have the rights. We just want to know if you're interested. Oh, yeah, thank you. I will. And they were online commercials where I'm essentially saying to the hero, I can read your mind. I know what you want. You want to drive a so-and-so with a stick shift this and a so-and-so that and a gearbox and whatever. And it's Psycho Mantis doing car commercials.
Okay, and you said this was in Florida. This happened. Oh my God.
Well, the company company I worked for was based in Florida. I did the recording here. They hired a studio in LA where I'm based, and just got online with me or over speakerphone to do the directing. But it was a Florida-based company. Yeah, they ad company. I don't remember who they were offhand.
Oh, that makes it even funnier because I'm a Floridian. I live in Florida, so I'm surprised I never saw this.
Ah, well, lately I've been doing commercials for a Florida company for healthcare. They wanted an older voice who can talk about healthcare companies.
Oh God, and, I think Mike Shell just found the commercial.
Oh, cool.
Yes.
So I had to go back and re-listen to Psycho and remember his voice, and because it had been ages since I'd done him. He's sort of a combination of a few different things. It's an unusual voice I had developed for him. So I definitely had to go back because I kind of made him Germanic, Russian. I combined a lot of little elements when I was auditioning to try to make him very different, and it got me the role. But it was hard to remember.
Jesus. Anyone? I noticed in chat, guys. You guys got any questions? I mean, come on. Some of you guys got to know this guy's work enough to want to ask something. Come on. They're normally very good about getting questions out there, considering the kind of stuff you've done. Like I'm looking on here. Like I'm sure you don't remember every single show that you've done, obviously, like we said. But you've done like some roles for like JoJo's Bizarre Adventure, Outlaw Star, Tenchi Muyo was probably another one.
I directed a lot of the Tenchi Muyos as well in the 90s.
Oh, yeah. Admittedly, there were a couple of characters in that show I didn't care for dub-wise, no offense, but...
Well, I didn't create it, but I did enjoy directing it. We had a fun cast, and it was a cool show to direct. I liked Tenchi Muyo. I enjoyed directing it. I thought it was goofy and fun.
Okay, so Kira Crystal's got they got one. Do you have a least favorite role you've done?
Oh, gee, that's a good question. I have never been asked it, and I've never given it a lot of thought. You get very pragmatic when you do it for a living, and so things like Max Mayhem, things that rip your throat. So I'd say some of the games that I've done for Blizzard, where I played monsters and things, it may not even be on my IMDb or Wikipedia, but back in the day, I used to do monster voices and that sort of thing. And now I can't, now I'm going to start coughing just from doing that much of it. But I used to be able to do that for hours at a time. The ones that were my least favorite were the ones that hurt my throat, quite frankly.
Yeah,
I did not do. I had been offered. Is it called hentai?
Oh God! Someone offered you to do that? Oh God!
Yeah, I was. I'm sure a lot of actors are. I was offered a couple of roles, a couple of times doing hentai, and as soon as I saw the footage, I said, "No, this isn't something I'm comfortable doing." This sort of work. So I can't say I regret it because I never did it, but I would have. There's some things I looped. I also, there's a thing called looping where you provide voices for television shows and films. I had my own group, and my group did all the Hercules and Xena shows, 200 and some odd shows in the 90s. And I did them for a lot of other shows that were popular at that time, ER and Chicago Hope, and a lot of the standard shows that were around. I did have one that I hated doing, a film. It was about a terrible person who raped and killed people. They didn't warn me before I went to do the film. And by the end of it, I was like, literally wanted to throw up. It was such a sickening movie. And I thought, well, okay, at the end, at least this guy will get his comeuppance. There'll be some horrible, he'll be torn by mad dogs. Something terrible is going to happen to him, and that'll be the comeuppance. At the end of the film, he walked off into the sunset, and I asked the producer who was there, I said, he doesn't get killed? He doesn't go to jail? Nothing. The guy said, no, I was thinking I might want to do a sequel, if the film works well enough. So I had to go to the person who hired me and said, I appreciate being hired, but never again, please. You cannot bring me in on a film like this again. I think I'm going to have nightmares tonight. I feel like throwing up. It was so disgusting.
I imagine, jeez.
Yeah, horrible. I don't like that kind of, I'm not much for that kind of, I don't want to say entertainment because I don't think it's entertaining.
No.
But I can't, I'm sorry, it's a good question. I wish I could name an anime character or something that the person might know, but nothing comes to mind as being a least favorite.
Well, if not least favorite, then what is any script that just pops out that says, you really want me to have him say this?
Oh, God. Well, there's too many to mention of that. And thank goodness, because I used to write anime, in other words, do the adaptations for lip sync. I had my own corporation for a while when I was doing looping. I did the first Jackie Chan pictures. One of my clients was Golden Harvest Pictures. And we did the first Jackie Chan pictures, which was really cool. Nobody had ever heard of him at that time. But anyway, it gave me the experience that if I'm in studio now and a line comes up and it really sucks or it really doesn't look good in the mouth, I'm allowed to give. I have enough age and experience where they'll usually let me give suggestions to repair it, fix it, and make it just maybe a little bit more palatable for the audience out there. Like, let's make it where it looks like the person might have actually said it and it fits in the mouth, and maybe grammatically just a little bit more correct, et cetera, et cetera. Mm-hmm. But no, part of what gets me through life is trying not to hold on to the negatives. So there's many jobs I've walked out of. I know that I've walked out of going, oh, God, that was awful. And just shake it off and forget it and just throw it out of the memory bank. Just walk away, cash the check, donate part of it to my cat charity, and walk away happily saying, I got the money. I won't go back and do that job again.
Can't say I blame you there, man. Oh Lord, that just But speaking of the charity, the cat charity that you're working on, that's the current thing that you're doing on top of your voice acting work. Why don't you tell us a little bit more about that?
Yeah, it's something I've become very passionate about because I got older, I got tired. I didn't want to keep directing. I don't run a loop group, etc. I'm only doing voice acting now, just acting, which feels like a vacation after you've been in charge and had budgets and etc. etc. So I had more time on my hands and decided that I wanted to do charitable work, and I love animals. I have currently have 3 cats at home, one of whom is a special needs boy with a neurological disorder called cerebellar hypoplasia. He wavers and falls and whatever, but he's the sweetest little boy, and he's learned to walk really well now that he's got a home to live in, etc. So anyway, I started volunteering at a place called the Kitty Bungalow Charm School for Wayward Cats, which is a feral cat rescue, a no-kill nonprofit charity. And I started in 2012. It'll be 8 years in August, and started volunteering, then volunteer coordinating, and now I sit on the board and do fundraising. So I actually do something called Voices for the Voiceless auction with other fellow animal lover voice actors, where we auction off our voices. In other words, people can bid to have Psycho Mantis do their outgoing phone message, or Matt Tracker, or whomever. Or they can have an autographed picture from Steve Bloom, one of his many characters, or Wendy Lee, or other voice actors who are kind enough to participate. So that's sort of my passion is working to save these little animals and using voice work as a means of doing that, as a means of facilitating fundraising to help these little critters that are stuck out in the streets through no fault of their own.
That is amazing right there. Like, if the community gets something cool out of it, they get the voice shout outs, and you get to help save a whole bunch of kittens. And as a cat lover myself, I am all in favor of that. So I definitely want to make sure we get the word out on that one, let people know they can participate and get those auctions in.
Appreciate it. Yeah, the auction's going to go online again. We did one last year. It'll go online about mid-August. Voices for the Voices. They can look for it, or they can look for Kitty Bungalow. But yeah, it's great because everybody wins. Yeah, the fans get autographed pictures or outgoing messages or other swag. I don't know if you know who Michael Bell is, but he's a longtime voiceover actor. He's done tons of stuff on many shows, and he's contributing a jacket that Lily Tomlin gave him. And I mean, we're getting some really cool swag. So it's a chance for people to get stuff they would never get otherwise. And every nickel goes to help animals. So yeah, it's win-win.
Absolutely. Got a question here from Akira Coops in the chat. Which of your roles was the most difficult to pull off?
Well, Psycho was definitely challenging because of the energy and the vocal placement. It's maybe one that they're not familiar with. I did a cartoon series, an original animation series, where I played 2 characters. I played a little mouse who had an attitude, and he sort of sounded like a little Joe Pesci. You know, nobody was going to push him around, see, because he was tough. Right? So he was fun. But I also played a Cajun crocodile. And very foolishly, I did the vocal placement somewhere between Tom Waits and Louis Armstrong.
So he was in there somewhere, and he was a Cajun alligator, man, and he could get down with that stuff. But to hold that placement for a long time is not easy.
So he was, and I think I had to sing as him too, which is not. I don't know how Tom Waits does it. I don't know how he pulls that off.
What becomes of the little boys? Never comb their hair.
I know why Tom Waits talks the way he does now. You try to sing like that for too long.
Oh my God.
Yeah, that was a tough one.
I could definitely imagine. Actually, this brings me to another question because we're talking about how you've gone, like you started back in the '80s, a bit like really dug in back in the '80s, but you've been you're still doing stuff to this day. I assume you've seen like how the industry has evolved and changed over the years. What has that been like, seeing that evolution?
Oh, incredible! Because it's been not only anime but also technically it's changed in amazing ways. When we began, anime was the little sister that nobody had ever heard of. A lot of quote legitimate voice actors wouldn't do anime or dubbing. They went, "What? I do original animation. I don't do that dubbing stuff." And it's just a fad and it's going to go away and whatever. We realized by the early '90s, no, this is here to stay and this is going to be big. And we were telling the union, look, the animation and games, it's coming, it's big. And they went, no, 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 it's TV and film, TV and film. Well, of course, we've seen it become huge monster industry. Technically, when we started, there were no beeps. When we dub now, the machinery, usually they use something called Pro Tools, which it's now so accessible. I have it on my own computer for when I work from home. But it signals you when to start to do the lip sync. In those days, we didn't have that. We had to look at the time code and just guesstimate when the mouths would start moving. And you couldn't move anything. So if you didn't hit the lip sync right off the bat, they just do it again and do it again and do it again until you got it right. That's why only a specific amount of people could do anime initially. It was a very small group of actors who were doing it in LA because even those that wanted to, some couldn't figure out how to do it. So to see that change and to see that actors now, young people who have been raised on anime, their ambition is not necessarily to do original animation or to do commercials. It's to do anime because that's what they were raised on. So that now there are thousands of, I can't keep track of the amount of actors in LA. From the handful that I used to go to, we used to have baseball games where 20 or 30 of us would show up with our kids and families and we'd have a ball game and a picnic because we were the anime actors. It was 1989. There was only 30 or 40 of us. To now there's thousands of us. And there are sites online that I belong to that are just populated by anime actors. The public isn't invited. It's just actors talking to actors. And I'm seeing all these young people of 20 years old that I'm talking to. It's kind of fun and exciting for me because I'm getting to meet all these new generations of people, many of whom are very talented. So yeah, it's and I'm, I guess I'm at the shelter. They call me Uncle Doug. We don't use the G word, Grandpa. It's Uncle Doug. So I don't encourage actors to use the G word either. But I am speaking to them sometimes from the voice of experience when they are asking about things or talking about things. Once in a while, I can pipe up and say, well, I can tell you this or that from, my 35, 40 years of experience, X, Y, or Z. And they're usually pretty receptive. And I learn from them because technically they are so adept at what goes on and how to record from home. And they know so much more than I do. And I use them as a resource. So it's great because, 50 years difference in age, perhaps in the case of some of us, but we still have that commonality and we can still talk to each other and share things about what we do in our work. But enormous change. I mean, it's just like a tidal wave of this small little wave of anime and people who weren't involved, not understanding or believing this is going to be huge as our games. We could see it coming. Getting people to believe us was something else.
Yeah, well, they're the ones eating crow now, aren't they?
Yeah. We got in. I mean, there's actors of my age who aren't working anymore, who didn't get involved in anime or games or whatever else. And here I am, thankfully, knock on wood. I still do some original animation work, but I also still do anime and I still do games. So it's cool. I'm still viably involved in the business, which is great.
Well, like you said, you worked originally with just a small group of voice actors to begin with.
Yeah.
Any stories that you might be able to regale us with that, as far as any behind the scene pranks from the booth with other voice actors?
Oh, well, pranks, not so much pranks, because we were always on a tight budget when we started. Everything had to get done quickly and whatever. But I mean, it used to be we would do all the specific roles, and then we'd bring in a group of actors to do all the minor roles and the walla, the crowd scenes or whatever. So if you ever had a guy like Mike Sorich, I don't know if you know who Mike Sorich is, but if you had a guy like Mike Sorich in the booth, you were going to be cracking up all day long, just from jokes and fun that people had. It was great fun just being in the booth with everybody and getting to know people. Now, unfortunately, that doesn't happen so much. Usually, if I do a role, they'll also have me do a couple of bits and some of the group crowd stuff. So you rarely get to record with a group anymore unless you're doing original animation, unfortunately. But I do recall a voiceover director who no longer directs voiceover, and he will remain nameless. And I think it will become evident very quickly why he no longer does it. He took himself very seriously, and his own felt he was quite the tail that wagged the dog. He apparently had somebody in auditioning for him whom he didn't approve of, didn't think they were very good. This is in the late 80s. And he handed them a quarter and said, "Here's a quarter. Call your mother and tell her you can't act."
Oh, wow.
Ouch!
Ouch.
Good Lord.
Ouch.
Yeah.
It is
On a funnier...
Oh, sorry, go
Sorry.
ahead.
I was just going to say a funnier, and I think I can mention his name, Mike Reynolds, who's probably 80-something now. Mike Reynolds was doing a role one time, and they said, "This is really weird animation, Michael, but we actually have a piece of shit that talks. And can you do a voice for it?" So he said, 30 years at the old Vic, and I'm doing talking shit? Well, fine then. I'll just say this role and attempt to do the best I can with. So Michael actually, I have done some talking strange things, talking tomatoes and talking whatever. Michael actually did talking shit, a piece of dog shit or something that was lying on the ground that had in some anime. So there's some weird things that happen along the line. But I can tell you a favorite. Somebody once said, I like these old sayings. He said, when you're a young man going to war, in World War I or II, you put extra bullets in your belt. When you're an old man going to war, you put extra food and supplies in your belt. So your perspective changes when you age. In other words, when I was doing Kill la Kill, one of my fun things about that role that I had of a mad doctor was that he wore a mask all the time and often had his back to camera. So it made the role really easy. I didn't have to worry about lip sync. So, these small things please you when you get older. What pleased you about that role, Doug? Well, that he wore a mask all the time. That was great. made the work way easier. Yeah, these are the things that pleased me in my old age. Don't have to work as hard.
And to go back to that first story real quick, the one thing I've learned in my business dealings is that you could be the greatest talent on the face of God's green earth. You could be the absolute perfection and talent of that field. But if you are an asshole to somebody, nobody's going to want to work with you. And that seemed to be the reason why that guy didn't last very long. Yeah,
he was good at what he did. He was good at directing and good at writing the scripts, particularly science fiction stuff was his forte. But yeah, eventually he wore out his welcome as a director, unfortunately, and with studios through that kind of attitude. Yeah, you were, and I won't name actors that I've known like that too, who thought they were the greatest thing on the green earth. And yeah, you wear out your welcome. You definitely wear out, no matter how talented you are. I had an actor one time that I stopped hiring, and he approached me in a parking lot. We were both working on the same job, and he said, "Doug, I noticed you've got this series you're doing, whatever, and you haven't hired me." He said, "Look, I know I can be difficult to work with, and I can be a bit of an asshole, but you have to admit, I'm an A actor. I'm very talented." And I said, "You are. You're very talented." He said, "But I get the feeling you'd rather work with a B actor who's easy to work with and then just work a little harder to lift his performance than work with a guy like me." And I said, "Wow, you just explained my attitude completely for me." Very succinctly. So now I don't have to explain it to you. Yes, you're absolutely right. When I'm in studio directing for 8 to 10 hours, I don't get those hours back. That's my life. That's not a rehearsal. That's my life. And if somebody makes it miserable, I've had a crappy day. So yes, I'd rather work with an actor that I have to work a little harder with, who's got a great attitude and is happy to be there. Thank you for explaining exactly why I'm not hiring you.
For saving me the trouble of explaining to you. Exactly.
Yeah, he was like waving his hand trying to think of how to explain it. And I went, "You put it perfectly."
Yeah.
Exactly right.
Gotta love it. Gotta love it. Anyway, Kira Crystal asks, since you've done a lot of dubbing roles for anime, have you ever gone back and actually watched like the original Japanese version of what you've worked on to see how it differs?
Oh, absolutely. And in some cases, they even send us when we're auditioning. I mean, there's some cases where I'm just cast, and that's always lovely. Somebody just knows my work well enough, and they'll say, Doug, I want you to play the role of so-and-so in this, and that's great. But I also still audition. And sometimes they will send you the footage of the original Japanese anime and say, this is the role that you'll be doing. We're not asking you to copy the vocal characteristics of this guy, but we want you to get an idea of what his performance was like. So that you can sort of base your audition, at least in tone. You know, was he very adamant? Was he a very aggressive character, or was he frightened or underplayed? So you have some idea of what the original was like that you can base your audition on. It doesn't happen every time, and other times, yes, I have gone back, or I've gone just recently. I went and watched Mask in Spanish. Somebody mentioned that they had watched it growing up in Spanish, and I said I'd love to see that, and they got me some footage which they sent me, which was great. And I got to watch the role that I originated dubbed into another language. So it's fun in either way, either direction. It's fun to see.
That always sounds like that's always one fun thing. You're like, you don't it's not gonna be this exact same, but you're just like, how does this differ? Like, what's the difference here? What did I create out of this?
Yeah, and it does help to have that the original, particularly in anime, usually of course is Japanese that you're listening to, and it does help to get some idea of what the tonality and how they approached it, and you do approach it differently. It's not only a different language; there's a different way of approaching things in different countries, and that's why sometimes I think some of the fans don't like the English anime when it differs too much from the Japanese, but it's cultural as well. But I think it's still interesting to listen to the originator's take on things and see what you could lift from that and be guided by.
Absolutely. It's always this is why I love doing these interviews, is I love learning more about how the industry works and how things do like that. And speaking of, as I mentioned to you before the show, a lot of our fans are fans of the tokusatsu stuff, mainly the Power Rangers and things like that. Mm-hmm. And you did some work. You did a couple of voices for Power Rangers and Beetleborgs.
Yeah.
And you were telling us a little bit about how you were like right there at the beginning before they even started making that. Share with the fans about that story, because I think they'd love to hear this.
Well, in 1985, when I was here in LA doing the Mask, the Mobile Armored Strike Command series, Saban was who had Power Rangers. They were generally a music company. They had been working with rock and roll people, and then they started to write music for cartoons, and they wrote the theme for Mask. Then they got some footage that they bought, and they had this idea of what could we do with this raw footage. I think they got it pretty inexpensively initially. What could we do to turn this into something interesting that we could market? But they didn't have any voiceover actors to test with. So they found a guy, and I don't know who he was, who could write lip sync a bit. And they had him write some script. And then they called the company I was working for, Deke, and said, do you have any voice actors who'd be willing to come over and try to do lip sync, matching existing footage for some of this stuff that we have? It's live action. And I said, I'd love to try. I've never done it, but I'd love to learn a new skill or do something I've never tried before. Sure, count me in. So 2 or 3 of us went over there, and they started to run the footage. And I thought, this is the strangest thing I've ever seen. These guys in costumes and strange monsters. And I mean, it's really odd. But whatever, we're being paid to be here. And it was my first experience doing lip sync, which was great because, as it turns out, I kind of had an aptitude for it. And I caught on pretty quickly how to get my voice into sync with the footage. And that odd footage, as it turns out, was early footage of Power Rangers. It wasn't called that at that time. They didn't know what to do with what they had, but they were experimenting, trying different things to see if they could find something they could hang together to make use of this footage. And then I guess from there, they got the idea of, hey, if we combine it with our own, if we shoot stuff here in the States with these kids in costume and combine it with footage, and et cetera, And that's when they came up with Mighty Morphin Power Rangers. But I was involved trying to do lip sync with that stuff in either 1985 or 6. I don't know when Power Rangers first aired, but I know I'm pretty sure it was a few years before
it was 1993 when they first started the original series.
93?
Yeah, it wasn't until 93 that they finally got things together for that.
Wow. Well, I guess they sat in it for a long time then, or kept experimenting and trying things then before they got it all put together, and it was Mighty Morphin Power Rangers. But they had that idea of buying footage, which other people had done before. What was it called? Dr. Bob Brilliant, Gigantor. Gigantor was a show that from I think the 60s or 70s that an American had bought. I had the honor of, when that series came back as the new Gigantor, or the new Adventures of Gigantor, the gentleman who had voiced Dr. Bob Brilliant had passed away, and I got the role. So I got to kind of do touchstone with some of the original anime by being Dr. Bob Brilliant in the new Adventures of Gigantor, which was kind of cool. But anyway, yeah, I was involved with that Power Ranger stuff when they were still experimenting, trying to see what they could do with this footage. And then once they got started with Power Rangers, I'd already been directing stuff for them as an independent. I directed some anime series, and also their very first original animation series, which was Little Mouse on the Prairie, is something I had directed for them. And at that point, I was kind of growing my career in looping, providing voices for TV shows and films. So I wasn't as available when Power Rangers started to do roles. But I'd come in once in a while and do monsters and stuff. Scott Page, who had been an engineer with Saban, was doing some of the directing. And I remember coming in, and I was working on my Sean Connery imitation a lot in those days. And I started to fool around doing Sean Connery as one of the monsters. And I said, well, of course, we can't do that. And he said, no, do it. Do it. So if you listen, I think it's the Beetleborgs to a character I believe named Eye Guy, a monster. Jesus Christ, it's been a while since I've done Sean. So he's going to be a little bit, I'm a little bit rusty, but he'll sound a little bit like Sean Connery, that monster.
Wow, yeah. I don't even see you listed on that. Like I'm only seeing 2 characters you ever did as far as that goes.
Oh, well, they didn't credit us for everything we did.
Yeah, no. Actually, no. I think it might have been a different character you're thinking of, because the character you're listed at for Beetleborgs was Dragonborg.
Oh, okay. Maybe it was for Power Rangers then. Or maybe Dragonborg was Sean Connery. I may have them mixed up.
Yeah, it's been a long time. There's no...
Yeah. A lot of stuff. I mean, even if you go, as I was mentioning before, if you go to my IMDb, my Wikipedia, there's a lot there, and that's only maybe about a third, 40% of what I've done, because it's mainly fans are mainly interested in anime, and they're the ones who post things to IMDb. And a lot of times we do voice work that we're not credited for. They're not obligated necessarily to credit us, and so sometimes they don't. So things get lost, and I don't keep track of everything. So a lot of credits do get lost along the way as well, unfortunately.
Understandable. Angie, you've been quiet over there. You got any questions for Doug? I don't want to leave you out of this.
Not really. Can't think of anything good right now. So, you guys been asking all the good questions.
Well, sometimes Sean Connery, I'll tell you a story about Sean Connery. When I first got to L.A., trying to make money every way I could, I started writing radio comedy sketches. And one of the first ones I sold was Sean Connery's Accents for Amateurs. It was Sean Connery, because everything that Sean does, he sounds exactly the same. And yet at that time, they were casting him as a Russian sub-commander and a this or a that or whatever. So I developed a sketch with Sean Connery's accents. Arigato gozaimasu, round eyes. Sean Connery will teach you Japanese in no time at all. So everything was exactly the same. But they bought the radio sketch, and hiya, kitty. From there, I went on to make a little money selling radio sketches for a while. But being able to imitate people, like I recently, about 2-3 years ago, did a Lego series, an online Lego thing where I was the mayor. And they wanted the mayor to sound like Danny DeVito. He wasn't the most honest guy, to run as the mayor, but he loved his daughter, and he gave her every break possible. So being able to do, a couple of different characters like Joe Pesci or Connery or him or whatever can come in handy in voice work and nab your roles now and again.
Yeah, having that kind of range can really open a lot of doors. I think we've learned that from experience over the years.
Oh, absolutely. You just never know when that kind of stuff's going to come in handy. Accents is what got me into looping work, which is looping. I know I haven't really explained it, but looping pays pretty much exactly the same as if you were doing an on-camera guest spot on a TV show. So you get residuals, you get a pretty good paycheck, and every time the TV show or film that you've done work on plays, you get residuals for it. So I've done some Jim Carrey films and worked on Lilo and Stitch and other movies like that fortunately still pay.
Nice, very nice. We're getting it. One other thing we can bring up, we should probably talk a little bit more your recent stuff, because I'm looking here and I see you've got a couple of projects that if they're either just coming out or will be coming out soon. Like recently, they just released a few months ago, Altered Carbon Resleeved, which you play the main character in that one, and of course you've got Japan Sinks, another Netflix. You've been working a lot with Netflix lately, from what I'm seeing here.
Oh, yeah. A lot of Netflix shows, both animation and live action, and only some of which are listed here. But I seem to be doing a Netflix show once or twice a month these days, yeah. And Japan Sinks looks cool. Japan Sinks, the footage I saw looks like it's a pretty cool movie, or series, rather.
Yeah, I can see just by looking at it, like just looking at some of the things I'm seeing here, this looks like it'd be really interesting to check out. So might be putting this on my list for later on down the road.
Yeah, I think it's pretty good from what I've seen of it. And Bonfire of Destiny was a live action one. There's quite a few Netflix projects, as you say, that I've been doing.
Yeah, I see that, and actually, that explains why the Japanese director for Japan Sinks is Masaki Yusa. And he's an interesting director when you see the anime he's directed in the past. So that understands why the animation looks so unique.
Well, I like my character in that he's not, because he's an older guy, he's not one of the main, 3 or 4 characters. But I liked him, Kunio, if I'm pronouncing it correctly. He's this older gentleman who maybe has a little bit of a drug problem and a little bit of a hallucinatory imagination problem, et cetera, et cetera. So he's a little bit out of it, a little bit wacky at times, but also dangerous. It can be dangerous too. So he was fun. He was an interesting character. Now that I'm getting older, as often as not, some of the older characters I play are benign grandfathers and et cetera, and which is great, but they're not always as interesting. So it's fun if I get to play somebody who's got more depth to him. He's got more. Kitty, don't knock that over. My cats have woken up again because they hear me talking. So little Minnow is coming in the room and she's adding. What did you want to tell the people? Did you want to tell them something? No, but she wants to reach. She'd like to touch the telephone, please, Dad.
I gotta love cats. I have one myself. I know exactly how it is.
What's also fun, if you look at the IMDb, you'll see something called Tangle Tower, video game from 2019. That's actually was done for a British company. I never met anybody involved. I don't remember how I found out about it, but I auditioned and got a role in it.
As a Felix fellow, rather very taken with himself, very egotistical, you might say.
He was a lot of fun, and this is a company I've never met anybody there. They're in Britain, paid me from Britain, and I recorded the script here at home, sent off the files to them, did the retakes here at home. It's a whole new world, where you don't have to be in studio with the people in order to do the work anymore, which is cool. Because it means you can work for more companies around the world now.
Yeah, that's another interesting thing about the way the evolution of the industry is like, and then especially, one of the silver linings of COVID-19 is that we learned that now a lot more VAs could work from home, and that opens up a lot of opportunities. So I can imagine we could be seeing a whole new generation of voice actors in the next few years.
Yeah, which it will disturb the younger actors. It won't bother me as much, but it'll disturb the. But it's true. I mean, I was recording commercials from here. I've recorded audio books from here, animation, games, but never dubbing. Not until the pandemic, and then suddenly we had to figure out how do we do anime from home, or not just anime, but dubbing live action projects for Netflix and other. This Japan Sinks I did from home. That was recorded from home. And I'm working on some other stuff. I'm non-disclosure agreement, so I can't talk about. But I'm working on some other live action shows for Netflix that I'm recording from home. I'm going to be recording Monday an ongoing character for a Netflix series. And again, I'm doing lip sync work from home, which is amazing. As you say, the steps that are the advances that are taking place are incredible, leaps and bounds.
That sign. We went from not even having the beeps for you to sync up your lip sync to now we could do that all from home. We don't even have to go to a studio anymore as long as you've got the right equipment for it. Like that is just a leap in just like 40 years.
I can remember taking breaks because we had to change the reels, and I'd go help the engineer change a reel. And when we got Pro Tools, I was directing when we first got Pro Tools, and the engineers were going, I was saying, well, I need to move it. And they go, okay, I know how to move, but how do we develop a language for what you want it earlier? You want it late? What is earlier? Does earlier mean earlier in the time code, or does it mean early? We had to develop a whole language to explain to the engineers how we wanted to do, and something we could compress things. So something was just a tick too long, well, compress it 96% and see what it looks like, and if it sounds okay. Ooh, doesn't sound good at 96, but it sounds okay at 97%. Weird. Okay, all of this discovery process we went through with the new technology as we were recording onto computers. It was incredible. And it keeps going.
It does. I can only imagine just even 10, 20 years down the road what we're going to be able to do. It's going to be crazy. And
I didn't tell you, but I haven't been totally forthright and honest with you. The truth is, when I first dubbed, we would carve the words into a rock. I'd go into a cave that had really good acoustics. We figured out which cave was good, and I would to the words until somebody mimed the story. And we were, because they couldn't act, but I could do the voices. And 3 or 4 of them would mime this, and that was the earliest dubbing that we did back in those days. So it was really primitive in the early days. I'd get paid, they might give me a skin, a piece of meat off a brontosaurus or something, but it was, we were getting paid. I was happy. I was working.
Oh my God.
Sure beat just sitting around trying to figure out how to make a wheel. I didn't know how to make a wheel. So, it was good for a creative person.
Oh, God. Oh. I think we need to stop there. I don't think we can top that. I don't know how you top that, but Doug, first of all, I want to thank you so much for taking the time to join us here tonight. It's been an absolute pleasure to talk with you tonight.
Sure, it's been fun. Thank you.
But for the rest of you guys, make sure you follow. If you have any social media, do you have Twitter or Facebook or anything that people can follow you on?
Again, I don't promote myself anymore at this point. So I don't have an actor site. I never created one. I'm not on Twitter. I'm not on Instagram. I'm hiding. So no, but what I would ask them, they can certainly on the IMDb and Wikipedia, they can see stuff that most of the anime is put out there. And if they will look for the voices for the voiceless auction, I would appreciate that to the nth degree. And again, they'll find lots of their favorite voiceover actors participating on that.
What I will do is I will grab a link for that, and I will post when we put up the VOD, the video on demand. We'll upload this to YouTube once we're done. I will post that up, and I will add the link to that in there. So everyone at home, make sure you guys check that out. Show your support. Take part of the auctions. You guys get some cool stuff, and you're helping a great cause. Definitely make sure you guys help take part of that. That would be much appreciated. But Doug, in the meantime, I want to thank you again so much for joining us. It has been, I'm very much looking forward to seeing what you've got coming down the pipe in the future.
Thank you so much. Appreciate it.
As for the rest of you guys, we're going to go ahead and wrap things up here. We want to thank you guys so much for joining us. If you indeed enjoyed tonight's show and you haven't done so already, make sure you give us a follow to keep up with all of our streams and more. And if you can, subscribe to get access to our exclusive Twitch emotes, our VIP Discord channels, and our loyalty badges. Speaking of Discord, if you haven't done so already, join our Discord server and give us a server booster. Gives us better audio quality for the streams and even more benefits for you guys. As for everything else, all of our commands are located down in the description below. Learn them, use them, love them, and they will love you. But in the meantime, we want to thank you guys for joining us as always here on RVTV. We are your Anime Mavericks, and we will continue to bring you all the anime news, reviews, and interviews that you crave. I'm the Shades.
I'm Yummy Angie.
And I'm Mike Shell.
And we'll see you guys next time. Rock on! Special thanks to my patrons like Voice and our Frozen Traveler. Subscribe today to make these streams even better.